Welcome back to Get Down to Business, the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. We know that every major life-changing invention starts with a simple idea. From the railroad to the microwave to fertilizer, accidents and ingenuity played key roles. And that's why I'm super excited to be joined by Peter Spitz, who immigrated to the United States from Austria in 1939 and embarked on a long career in the energy and chemicals industry with 7 of his own scientific patents. He was the founder and CEO of Chem Systems Incorporated and a frequent lecturer at MIT. And he's written a new book. It's called Reflecting on History, How the Industrial Revolution Created Our Way of Life. Peter Spitz, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for joining us.
Well, I'm very happy to be here.
Absolutely. Peter, what prompted you to write this book?
Well, this is actually my 4th book. I wrote 3 books before over a period of about 15 years, and they were more about energy and chemicals than anything else. And actually, I spent a lot of time in England as part of my work, and I learned a lot about the Industrial Revolution, and I visited some of the areas where it took place. And so when I wanted to write a new book, I said, I really should write something about inventions in general, much broader than energy and chemicals. So that's the background.
Oh, super helpful. Again, chatting with Peter Spitz. And Peter, as an inventor yourself, what about these inventions inspires you the most?
I was inspired by reading about the inventions made in the Industrial Revolution. And I realized that I was an inventor myself, so I should learn a lot more about a lot of the inventions that took place over the 300 years from the start of the Industrial Revolution to the present.
And Peter, what can we learn from inventions hundreds of years ago that applies to the inventions today?
Well, I think there are some similarities and a lot of things that are quite different. I think some of the similarities are that there are people, and mostly in the advanced countries, which were even advanced at that time of the Industrial Revolution, that were looking to improve their way of life, their way of living, the places to travel and how to get around them, the tools they were using, and so forth. And that's what led to the inventions during the Industrial Revolution.
And again, I'm chatting with the author of a brand new book, Reflecting on History, How the Industrial Revolution Created Our Way of Life. Again, that author is Peter Spitz, who is an accomplished founder and CEO of a large company, Chem Systems Incorporated, and an educator. And again, Peter, continuing on that theme, I'm curious, from your research, what's different about the process of inventing today than it was during the Industrial Revolution?
Well, of course, there are quite a few differences. Probably the most important difference is there are so many tools today for inventors to use, and there were practically no tools at the time of the Industrial Revolution. They had to make some of the tools themselves in order to even be able to invent some things. Also, today there's a lot of money available for inventors from various sources, both private and public. In the time of just after the Industrial Revolution, people had to pretty much finance themselves in order to create and to invent something.
Peter, can you talk about some of the inventions that started out as accidents? Was there an aha moment when a scientist realized the potential?
Well, I cover a couple of them in my book very quickly. One of them was the microwave oven. Turns out there were some engineers from Raytheon that were shooting down German planes during the Blitz. And by accident, or probably, they turned the magnetron that was setting up the waves on the pocket of one of the people working there. And he had a candy bar in this pocket, and that candy bar melted. And he said, "Oh, this is really amazing. This invention, this radar machine obviously transmits some heat," and it melted the candy bar. So the next day he brought in an egg, and he aimed the radar on the egg, and the egg exploded. So he and one of his coworkers said, this ought to be a way of heating some things. Maybe we should try to figure out how to make a heater that people could use in their homes using the same technology. And that led to the microwave oven. Now, the other one I think was interesting that I cover in my book are the 3M Post-it, those little pads that people use. So the particular inventor worked for 3M, the big company 3M, and they were working on trying to develop some new adhesives. And they put together some different chemicals, and they got a very strange adhesive. It was an almost no adhesive qualities at all. And they said, well, this is useless. We're going to try something else. But a couple of people working on that say, there must be some other use for a weak adhesive. And as it turned out, one of them went to church. He was in the church choir, and he used some little slips of paper to show the place where he was singing in the hymnal. And as he was doing that, he said, if I coated some little pieces of paper with that weak adhesive, I could put little stickers in the hymnal and just pull them off so that you don't ruin the hymnal, but it would tell me where I'm supposed to sing.
Yeah.
And that was the history and birth of the 3M Post-its.
Peter, that's an incredible story. And again, so many lessons learned over there. When we come back after this very quick break, I want to talk to you about some of the early women inventors and some of the other areas that I know you talk about in your fantastic new book. It's called Reflecting on History, How the Industrial Revolution Created Our Way of Life. Again, chatting with Peter Spitz. We'll be right back. And we're back on Get Down to Business. I'm chatting with Peter Spitz, the author of Reflecting on History, How the Industrial Revolution Created Our Way of Life. Peter, you've been sharing some fascinating stories from your research, which is amazing. Can you talk about any of the early women inventors? Are their contributions overlooked?
No, I don't think so. I think there were relatively fewer women inventors. And thinking back, one of the most important ones that some people know about was a woman called Ada Lovelace. She actually was the daughter of the famous Lord Byron in England. A lot of people have heard of him, a famous lover. Anyway, for some reason, she, living in the 18th century, became very interested in mathematics, which is in itself quite amazing. And she was one of the first people who wrote a program for a computer. There was no computer, but she conceived of the idea of writing programs for some kind of a machine that a famous inventor called Charles Babbage was actually working on, and she was collaborating with him in an extremely important and new way. Another woman I can think of is Marie Curie, who worked with her husband on Röntgen, looking through bodies and looking at the bones using some radiation material. So Marie Curie was another early inventor, I guess, so a couple of hundred years, well, certainly well over 100 years ago. There was a very recent, very important woman who invented the biotechnology called CRISPR. I can't think of her name right now, but she probably should be listed as an extremely important woman inventor in biology.
That's good stuff. So speaking of specific inventions that sort of have changed our lives, can you talk about the process of discovering penicillin?
Penicillin, yes, that came about because some scientists in a laboratory in England noticed there was some mold on their windowsill, and that there were some insects that had died when they came close to that mold. And so they found it very interesting, and they started carrying out more experiments and found that this mold had actually some molecules that were hostile to different kinds of bacteria, such as streptococci and some of the diseases, some of the venereal diseases, and so forth. And so they they realized they had a very interesting discovery, but it took them a long time to figure out that they could actually synthesize chemically the material that was in that mold. And once they found out how to do that, they realized they could make something called penicillin. Name came from a certain plant they were using as an example. And penicillin basically became the first antibiotic, all because somebody looked at a mold and realized that mold was killing some flies.
Peter Spitz, I know there's a lot more that we could talk about in a longer conversation. I look forward to it. I know that there's a lot of great advice that you have for young inventors today. And again, I'm chatting with the author of a new book reflecting on history, how the Industrial Revolution created our way of life. This is his fourth book. And again, that's Peter Spitz. Peter, I want to make sure our listeners can find this book and get in touch with you and see all of the important research that you've been doing. How can they do that?
Well, first of all, the book is sold on Amazon and in Barnes & Noble and so forth. And also, I have a website called peterspitzbooks.com.
Fantastic. Peter Spitz, thanks so much for joining us. And again, we'll be back, of course, next Sunday at 6 p.m. right here on AM 560 The Answer. But our shows are also available wherever podcasts can be found. Just search for Get Down to Business. And be sure to subscribe, rate, review, and share. Get in touch with me on my website, syklein.com. To success, let's get down to business. We'll see you next week. Have a great weekend.